Hi folks, welcome to today's color process video. Right, the last two videos I did them in real time and showed you my entire process, but for today's video, unfortunately, I'm going to be doing the typical time-lapse thing because one of the downsides to living in a place with a housemate is your housemate could be asleep due to work, and I had been working on my comic fairly early today because I'm kind of getting myself back into my typical routine again. And yeah, I didn't want to risk waking my housemate by talking while I worked, so I wanted to wait until, you know, he was up out of bed before I started doing this. Anyways, so let's talk about today's comic. So, with today's comic and the comic beforehand, the one I put out a couple of days ago, I'm beginning to feel like I'm getting uh, back into not just my routine, but kind of getting over the weird funk I've been in for the past few weeks. I've mentioned this before, but ever since the end of Christmas, I just have not been feeling right, just in terms of my mood. And like anytime I'd sit down to draw, just I couldn't get build up the enthusiasm to really do my best work. Um, and I found myself getting up much later out of bed. Like typically with my comic, I had gotten myself into a routine of getting up at um, about 6:30 in the morning, and for the most part, that had immediately a very positive effect on my comic. Um, I mean, not just in terms of the output of my comics themselves, but just for me personally, it just gave me more time to focus on other things such as exercise and healthy body, healthy mind, and all that. And I found after the Christmas, I mean, during which I hadn't drawn for about 3 weeks, trying to get myself back into things after Christmas was just, it felt like this gargantuan task. And as of today, like today is the first day since I've come back, pardon me, since I came back after Christmas, that I actually got myself up at 6 a.m. And the one thing I find is one thing that kind of always gets me kind of reset if I'm feeling kind of aimless is cleaning my room. as as simple as that sounds, but like I find anytime I do a fairly extensive clean of my room, the room in which I'm sitting right now, it tends to almost kind of flip a switch in my mind, which gets me kind of more focused again. I don't know what it is about it. Um, and it couldn't just be that, but I'll take it. I'll take anything that will give me the impetus to get back into my work routine again. So with today's comic, it came to me fairly quickly. Like it. I mean, I sat down at the table, I doodled for a bit, and then within a few minutes, the initial idea was drawn, and I drew the comic and so on, and it went well. And I find not just drawing my comics do I feel kind of back on the saddle, so to speak, but also my coloring. I felt that I felt that my coloring had been kind of, prior to this comic and the previous comic, it hadn't been great. Um, Now, it doesn't help when well, actually, my apologies. I mean this comic, the prior comic, and the comic prior to that as well. But before those comics, my drawing wasn't really quite up to spec, and there's only so much you can do with color to enhance art that isn't great. You know, like uh, you can't you can't let coloring do the majority of the grunt work. I mean, it is possible, but it can be a completely thankless task, especially when the art you're working with isn't all that great. And I feel that's kind of the situation I was in with a lot of the comics I was doing after I came back in the new year. And I think I'm kind of gradually, unclogging the cogs of my mind or something like that with the past few comics. I mean, I still have a ways to go. Like, I think some of the lighting on the characters, especially the guy, um, I think it isn't quite up to my usual standards, but uh, it's a start. And I mean, on like whatever about that, the one, two, three, the fourth panel with the UFO like looking down on the Earth, that's one of the best things I've done in quite a while. I think personally, just like I did consider keeping it flat, just going for various flat shades, but I felt I needed to do something more rendered, like put effort into something like that, just to see if I still had it in me. And yeah, I think it turned out quite well. Now, I think the last panel, you can very much tell with that one that I was kind of getting maybe a bit bored or impatient at that point, because there there isn't really all that much going on with the color there. Like, I could have put a far more effort into that when it came to like getting a more rendered 3D look to the background. But at that point, I was pretty much done with the comic, and I wanted to just be done with it, just to finish it. So I just added like slight gradients to the background and left it at that. I mean, again, it comes down to that thing I was talking about with the previous comic, where sometimes you've just got to know when to quit, and when not to, when not to like render every single little detail. Like in that panel, the only thing that really we need to pay attention to here are the two aliens in the foreground and the big kind of monitor, TV screen, whatever. And every other detail is kind of like, it's there, but it's not the main focus. And I mean, it's not an excuse to not at least try, but I find I'm getting more and more comfortable with making decisions like that, of just saying, do you know what, this is fine, leave it be. And yeah, yeah. So, look, that's pretty much all I have to say about this one. So I will leave it at that. Thank you very much for watching, and I will talk to you at the next video. Take care.